Welcome to the Avro Heritage Museum podcast, supported by Museum Development North and Arts Council England.
Hello, and thank you for listening to this episode of the Avro Heritage Museum podcast with me, Chris Beswick. Craig Hadfield is a long-standing museum member and volunteer. We're going to be hearing about his milk round as a 16-year-old boy delivering pints of milk to different parts of the aircraft factory. He tells us about all the aircraft that he got to know in an age when security was more relaxed, although the line was drawn at having top-secret military aircraft getting onto photographs. And Craig talks us through his career in the fire service, which brought him into contact with the airfield, collaborating with the Woodford Fire Service officers in the fire station that was eventually to become the home for our museum. As part of the Cheshire Fire Service, Craig was called out, sadly, to a motorised glider crash on the golf course adjacent to the airfield, as well as to the Spitfire crash at the 1992 Woodford Air Show, which we plan to feature in a future podcast. We also find out why Craig became to be known as the Bomb Man, especially for his work on building a faithful replica of Barnes Wallis's Upkeep Mine, the so-called bouncing bomb for use in Operation Chastise, the Dam Busters raid. I chatted to Craig with my colleague Jim Clancy, and we began by asking him to recall the days when farmland, rather than houses, is what you would have seen on your approach to Woodford.
When I was 16, a friend of mine knocked on the door and he said, Moss is looking for another man to work on his farm. You want to get down there? He's a good bloke to work for. So for those of you who don't know, this was Mr. Harry Moss, and he had Sheardfold Farm, a lovely gentleman. And recently the farm has been knocked down and it's all gone now, but his bungalow still remains there, where his grandson lives to this day. And I ended up working for Harry. And he said to me, he says, you've got a moped. He says, can you drive? I says, yeah. He says, all right then. He says, there's quite a few rules about this airfield, you know. He says, you never go across the runway because we've got our own traffic lights at the farm. And he says, you always look over there to make sure they're on go before you cross them. And if you go across it with a muck spreader, you sweep up after you, but keep your eye on the lights in case anything starts to come in. So he's quite a joker, Harry, lovely person. And he says, we'll teach you the milk round the factories. I says, well, I haven't got a licence. Oh, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to tell him, he says. So he learnt me the milk round the factories. So every morning I'd set off, come up the Perry track, from Sheardfold Farm with a pickup, and I'd start at flight sheds. Then I'd go to Skillful, and Skillful was the nurse, and they called her Skillful because they reckoned she knew nothing. Even the pilot said that if they had anything wrong with the plane, they didn't want to come back here because she'd be in the ambulance. And every nook and cranny of the airfield, he used to leave a pint at a spray shop, pint at the fuel farm, and then all the canteens. And if you got there before 10 o'clock to the new assembly canteen, the head chef there liked his milk early. He used to do you a nice great big butty and a brew. So it was worth getting there quick. But jumping on, I'm actually working for another dairy by accident and delivering milk around all the new houses. And it takes me exactly the same time as it took me in 1976. There goes the story.
So what kind of sights did you see, Craig, when you were on that original run delivering milk around the airfield?
Oh, all sorts. I mean, I used to stop for my dinner and talk to the people that were engine running the Nimrod, you know, on the different pans. And they'd say, oh, go and have a look. You won't go in, have a look, you know. So I always remember once going in and he said, quick, hide, foreman's coming. And they hid me in the toilet while the foreman come to see what they were doing. And I actually heard of the foreman say, what's that tractor doing there? And they said, oh, he's gone to get a part for it. Oh, right. Because you'd have got shot for being in a Nimrod in them days, you know. But they said, oh, come in, have a look. You know, they didn't mind at all. I mean, every aircraft that's been here except for Queen's Flight, I've been in. You know, the spray shop, the 748, you know, oh, we're going to have a sit in it, you want. You know, every aircraft that's been here, the Dove, the Victor, my involvement with the airfield was actually started when I was working for Harry. And I went to agricultural college. I learned about machinery. And he said, Craig, he says, I'm getting some brand new machinery. He said, I've got all the idiots here. He says, I wouldn't trust them with it. Will you be trained up on it? So I said, oh, what is it? He said, oh, it's a Class Jaguar 60. Now, for those who don't know what a Class Jaguar 60 is, it is a silerator that goes behind the tractor. He says it's going to go behind this 595 tractor, and we've got some brand new trailers coming from Bateson's. He said it's going to be a really nice setup. He said, but you got to learn to use it properly, because if anything goes wrong with it and you don't look after it, he said it's mounting to repair it. So I said, right, so I went to class and learned about this machinery, and hey-ho, try it out at Barry Eardley's farm, which is just up the road, Brookhouse Farm. We try it out on that. Remote control chute, everything, brand new tractor, brand new trailer. It was like being 17 in a Ferrari, you know. So we come onto the airfield. So I'm merrily working away. Harry comes up in the pickup with this bloke with a camera. And he said, oh, this guy's from Farmers Weekly. He's come to photograph the setup. I says, all right, fine. No problem. We've been photographing 10 minutes. Next minute, security's on us everywhere. Because we went too close to this Nimrod, which is where we were mowing the grass anyway. But they were frightened that he'd got photographs of this Nimrod. So security come over, they actually ripped the film out of the camera. He got a right telling off for that. And then I just stayed involved with the airfield, and basically in my earlier days, really, before I even started working for Harry, was he used to live at Hope Lane Cottage, which is the other end of Hope Lane. And if you heard a 748 fire up, the wind was blowing the right way. The trick was to get on your push bike and race down to the last stop road end of the runway and get there before it turned round. And I always remember the old Borneo 748s and the Australian Royal Navy. And to this day, I can still remember the registrations of them. They had 15709 and 710, you know. How's that for being an anorak? All the dubs that aerospace used to have, and the herons, and just one heron, 4 dubs. It just come on from there, my interest in aviation. Well, I joined the fire brigade in 86. That's how I met Paul. Paul Lord used to be station officer here, and my lads used to train with his lads, and we got a bond that way. That's why they have their own fire brigade here, because they were specialist trained. But if something was big was happening, or what, a plane was coming in that had a problem, we'd always get called out to it as well, you know. Yeah. Luckily, never always landed safely, like, you know. But Skillful was in her ambulance waiting for him, you know.
Even though they didn't want to be subject to her tender mercies. No.
And my sub-officer said to me, he said, in your lifetime as a fireman, he says, you'll go to 1 aircraft crash. And I've been to 4 throughout my career. You know. 2 at Woodford and 2 helicopters around Adlington. No, I remember coming here, and we used to get called out at night if the acid bath caught fire and the alarms went off here, and you used to have a good look round the 146 line, and, you know, I used to love it. But I've always sort of been involved with the aviation side of it and the fire brigade side of it, you know, starting as a fireman, ending up a station officer. They used to have a rig that used to set a light, used to call it like the concrete plane, and it was mainly made of tin, and they used to feed it with fuel, and you used to have to like put it out with foam. Well, if you were good enough, you could actually put it out with water. And I always remember once I was on the branch as a number 1, and number 2 and 3 were behind you, pushing you forward, because the force of this thing, you couldn't hold it on your own, it would pick you up off the ground. And my face mask slipped down, and it was that hot, it's actually, I looked like I'd been sunburnt, it took the skin off my face, you know. But, yeah, happy memories, really, happy memories. And then, I forget what happened. Paul said to me, he said, hey, he says, they're after some people to join the museum. He says, at the moment, it's at New Assembly. He said, and it's going to be moved to the fire station. So I says, all right. He says, you fancy coming for an interview with me? So we went for an interview at New Assembly, and We had 2 interviewers now. Anyway, I know they said, "Oh, don't look so worried, it's only a volunteer thing." So we said, "Oh, we don't need you until we move down here." So I said, "Fine." I think the first job I had was carrying the flagpoles from up top down to here, bringing them down here. And then as the museum started, I had a bad accident. I'd fallen off a roof. So when the museum first opened in 2015, I was in a wheelchair. And then I got interested in things, and they said, "Oh, can you do us a bouncing bomb?" So I said, "Yeah." I thought, let's get an old oil drum and paint it. It'd be right, And he said, "Oh, here's the plans." They had the plans upstairs in archive. So I looked at these plans. I thought, oh, God, these are beyond me a bit, So a good friend, Martin, we call him Lambretta Martin because he rebuilds Lambrettas. He worked at ProSeal. So I said to Martin about this, and he looked at it. He said, "Bloody hell," he says, "that's a project." He says, "I wouldn't mind getting involved with that." He says, "Let me have a word with my gaffer." So I said, right. So the guy that used to own ProSeal is now sold out to an American company. And he also has a museum up at Bollington, a nice motorbike museum, which is, you can go and visit it, but you have to book an appointment. And he gave Martin permission in work's time to help me with this bomb, or upkeep mine, however you want to call it. So that's how the bouncing bomb came to be. We got it built, and we brought it back here and painted it, and loads of different people helped me with it. And then we said, well, we haven't got a trailer for it. So told me, mate, he was the head mechanic at EasyJet. He says, "I'll have a word with my boss, I might just have something for you." And he phoned me up a couple of nights later. He says, "I've got a trailer for you." Got the trailer. So we mounted it up, made some brackets, and we actually made the A-frame upside down. So this is like it was turned the other way up. It would be like the same coupling as it would have on the Lancaster. That was that. So then they said, "Oh, I've got nothing to tow it with." So at the time, I was restoring a Fergie that came from Lincoln, and it was believed that it used to mow the grass at Scampton. So I thought, well, instead of making it into an agricultural one, I'll put it in RAF colours. You could still see the yellow on the bonnet. So that's what it did, and that's how it all started. And of course, that year, somebody from the RAF come down, and they saw it, and they wanted it to go to this Woodford Air Show. Then it went to loads of different places. Then it led the Royal Lincoln Show, the military parade there. It led there. And Johnny Johnson come down here. It was there for him, and he actually signed it. It went to Manchester when they had a big RAF display there. So, it's been all over the country. So then they wanted a cookie bomb doing for the Lancaster. So we did a cookie bomb, which was a lot easier to do than actually doing the bouncing bomb. And then moved on then to doing the Vulcan bombs. So I think they call me the bomb man my claim to fame is actually taking a bomb into Manchester Airport, not blowing it up and bringing it back out. And they parked it under the Nimrod all night, this bomb. I always laugh at that. I'm the only person who can say I've taken a bomb into Manchester Airport and taken the bomb back out again. But no, so we've all different projects on.
Going back to the upkeep, you said you had very complex plans.
Yeah. So it's an exact replica down to the size of it, and the hard bit was actually getting the wood to actually curl around it in a barrel shape. But we used that wood that they use for they do counters with in shops that goes round corners, and luckily it was that big we could actually bend it round. Martin was the expert on it. He was a godsend. It wouldn't have been done today except for him. And I actually took him with me to the Royal Lincoln Show, and he actually saw it going round the showground, so he was like dead proud of it,
When you were putting together that replica of the bouncing bomb, did it give you any insights into the original engineers that must have had to build those from scratch?
Well, it was funny because the actual bouncing bomb that Barnes Wallis took to the War Office, that they laughed him out of the place at the time, I actually own, and it's in this building.
Yeah.
And that was just like a mock-up of the small one. But when you look at how much work went into building the small replica to show the War Office, you realise how much went into it, you know what I mean? A fantastic piece of engineering. I mean, since then, it's got me collecting old stuff from the Dam Busters, and when I go to shows, I put up, all different stuff, and different photographs of different people, and I think me and Frank have got to do one at Glossop and one at Stockport. I'm glad Frank's coming because he knows his stuff and I don't, so it'll be all right. He can answer all the hard questions.
And I presume, Craig, we've got the plans because we converted actually 23 Lancasters, 19 used on the raid. That's why we've got the plans.
Yeah, that's why we got the plans. And after the war, Barnes Wallace's son did actually work at Woodford, I believe.
Last Thursday, we had a group here, and the guy came up to me and said, I've just been talking to your colleagues in archives. I brought in a letter from Barnes Wallace.
Yeah.
And I had a look at it, and it was a letter to Roy Chadwick.
Yeah.
The gist of it was, when I came up with this, I fully expected to be told by the people, on the aircraft side to say, it can't be done.
Yeah.
But you said, we'll do it.
Yeah.
And so it was a personal letter to Roy Chadwick.
Yeah, I've got a couple of letters that are in the case. It's next to the Lancaster.
Yeah. Thank you to Craig for painting that picture of Woodford back in the day. We'll have more from Craig next time when we learn about one of his main roles at the museum, about his friendship with Martin Willoughby, the driving force behind our S for Sugar Lancaster replica. And Craig shares his memories of Woodford Air Shows. Please join me and Jim for that episode. If you know anybody who you think would enjoy our podcast, then please share it with them. And anyone who feels that they have an Avro story to tell and could contribute to one of our podcasts, and get in touch with us on podcasts@avroheritagemuseum.co.uk. That's podcasts@avroheritagemuseum.co.uk. Thank you for listening today. It's goodbye for now from me, Chris Beswick.
Make sure you follow us in your podcast app to ensure that you don't miss out on future episodes.